Welcome to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo. Let's just jump right in here. You know, uh, today I'm at the libertydaily.com and I'm looking at this headline here. It said breaking Nicaragua dictator eliminating elections to stay in power. This is what socialists do. Now, thus far in the equation here in America, the DSA, these radical leftist lunatics, uh, don't have the centralized power yet where they can consolidate and eliminate elections. You can bet your bottom dollar that this is something they want to do. I listened for decades to the late, great Rush Limbaugh. And Rush Limbaugh used to say multiple times that if the left were to find a way to do away with elections, they would gladly do it because they find it cumbersome to go out there and get elected because the dumb voters don't know that they are these special egomaniacs that deserve to stay in power while they destroy the country. And sadly, in far too many cases, we have Americans who are good with that. Now, all of these Americans that are good with it, they're going to shortchange their tune when they see what happens when the socialists consolidate their power. And I know a lot of people, including now a lot of Democrats, are suddenly starting to be terrified as to what's happening to their party because they have to know that at some point in time, people are going to stop voting for them in much greater numbers that they already have. I believe if there are free and fair elections, that the Democratic Party would implode because nobody wants the nonsense they're spewing. And even though many in the Democrat Party are now somewhat aghast when they see what's happening, they all are part of the problem because they keep feeding this. They keep feeding the narrative. And yes, they're going to come after them in due course, just like they're going to come after all of their perceived enemies. It's not just actual enemies with socialists. And I don't know how many examples we can find of raging lunatics showing us that they believe the answer is violence. And that's what the socialists will ultimately bring to America. So a lot of these people who are sort of sitting on the fence right now and being quiet because they don't want to get involved, well, they may find out that they're on the list that's put together to illustrate their comrades that are not quite in the friend column. And they're going to be marked for being removed from the planet. Let's put it that way. They'll be sent to the mortician. That's what's going to happen. And there is such a history as to what happens when socialists consolidate their power in a country. People die. So in Nicaragua, you have a dictator. He knows his policies aren't working. He knows the people don't like him. But it's too late for those people because in one of their moments of not using the brain that God gave them, they elected these leftist loons and then they get in and destroy. There's no clearer example of what leftists do than in the UK today. The UK, the people decided that, hey, these conservative people weren't exactly producing anymore, so let's go with Labour. And they put Labour in, and in just a short couple years, that country has been decimated. And it gets worse by the day. And yes, you do have protests now at least, but, in the UK, they're actually pursuing legislation that's going to prevent individuals from posting on a social media account. They want to have to control that. And the reason they want to control it is simple, because they know that people are not going to like their narrative. And so they have to take these people away from making decisions that they're not going to like or stand for. And, you know, the problem that we have in America is certainly this is something that's been going on for decades. But for decades, there have been people from both political parties who have come out and said that the spending in this country is unsustainable. And while they all believe it's unsustainable, not a one of them seems to want to take the initiative to try to fix any of the broken problems that this country is facing. And we're going to face these problems because it's going to be at some point in time forced upon us. And I think that process of forcing is going on even as we speak. You know, you have the private credit area imploding, and the criminal activity that we're finding out about and hearing about now goes beyond the pale. And although it has been rumored that a lot of these executives have already lawyered up, and because they've heard of one or two different federal investigations, I don't think they have too much to worry about, because that's all this administration does is investigate. They don't charge anybody. Or when they do charge people, they charge the lowest street level people they can find, leaving the higher ups in power. You know, I'm a conservative. And as a conservative, I blame most of the problems that we're having in this country, not on the Democrats, but on the Republicans. And why is that? Well, every time the Republicans were in power and in a position to actually do some of the very things that they always claim they're going to do, it doesn't happen. You know, I think the best example of this, we heard from members in the House and the Senate all the time about how, boy, if they had a chance to repeal Obamacare, it would be gone. And then they were put in power, and guess what? They didn't touch Obamacare because they were gaslighting the voters. And then they get mad when the voters knock them out of power. And see, the problem that the voters now have is they have two parties, neither of which is doing the will of the people. And sadly, in President Trump's case, you know, one thing I'm always going to remember about President Trump and his first administration, and that was the man gave it his best shot to get all his campaign promises over the finish line. And he didn't get them all there, but it wasn't for lack of trying, and everybody could see who the culprits actually were, whether it be the courts, whether it be Congress, whatever. Donald Trump gave it a really honest effort. I don't see that from him here in his third term. You know, and they know that they have these problems because it was just the other day when Besant came out and said, yeah, there's $1 trillion worth of gold in Fort Knox. Well, this is the same Fort Knox that Donald Trump said on day one he was going to open up and show people whether or not the gold is there. So that's not happening. So what does it make you think? Think about that. They're not showing you because it's all there, right? You want to believe that? Go ahead. But it's a broken promise of Donald Trump. And nobody, so far as I know, nobody forced Donald Trump to make that an issue. The same thing with the Epstein files. The president knew how the people felt about the Epstein files. And so as he ran for re-election to his third term, he said on day one he's going to release the Epstein files. Now, the other day, J.D. Vance came out and said that perhaps there were some communication problems with the release of the Epstein files. And J.D., if that's what you think you're going to gaslight the voters about, I can't stop you. But let me tell you, this is one area that the public has a long memory about. And they're really, really, really livid, I think is the proper word. that nobody else has been arrested and charged in reference to the Epstein files. And everyone realizes that there's a lot more information that hasn't been released. And I suspect that there is a lot of information being held by third parties that was removed, I'll say, from any federal database or place where these things could be accessed. You know, when it came to the Epstein files, the first thing that I didn't understand is why Pam Bondi, knowing there was already a problem, didn't send one or two of her most trusted aides to the Southern District of New York to obtain all of the information. Instead, she kept sending memos and emails and gave them plenty of time to destroy information, which I suggest is probably what happened. And so, Mr. Vice President, I think you're being disingenuous on the Epstein files, and the American people know it. And what aggravates me the most about it is the fact that it's illustrating to everyone there is this multi-level justice system in America where certain people are able to commit whatever crime they want and get away with it. Well, let me clue you in. This country can't survive that way. Now, there is one party that is doing everything in their power to destroy the rule of law. And the pushback from the Republicans is minuscule to non-existent. You know, and this is typically how it goes. When Democrats get in power, they do everything they can to destroy everything as soon as possible. Now, of course, they don't buy into the fact that they're going to be creating this calamity for the people. No, they think that this time it's going to be different because they're in charge. And it never is different. But these people are never going to learn. And voters got to learn that they better watch what's going around and become a little more active because they're not going to like where this country's going right now. And right now, there's a clear path. I see an absolute clear path for the Democrats, socialist lunatics to take over power. And once they take over, what's going to happen is like they said, they'll do away with the filibuster. They'll ram through their stuff. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They'll probably go up to 18 members, so they'll be adding 9 liberal loons, which will be passing laws like you've never seen before, which will destroy this country completely and totally. It'll be just like what the people in the UK are seeing. You'll be saying, how could such a great country be put on its knees that quickly? Well, you're going to find out. And, Republicans, I remember it wasn't all that long ago that Glitch McConnell was up for re-election, a re-election he never should have run in. But nonetheless, he's another one of these narcissists that cling to power as long as he can, even when he's on his deathbed and we can't get a clear answer as to exactly what his condition is. I mean, the man is a sham. But when he ran for re-election, he was elected. And they questioned voters because I don't remember who he was primaried. And after the election, when they were interviewing alleged voters, the story was, well, he brings the bacon. Okay, so put those people who bring the bacon back in power, keep doing that, and just sit tight waiting for the economic calamity, which I think has already started. I think we're doomed. I think we're in multiple doom loops. And certainly one of them is on our debt. We're having to borrow exorbitant sums of money, record levels, and the amount we're paying on our debt keeps going up. And the reason it keeps going up, and this is interesting, back in the Biden administration, Janet Yellen realized that because of inflation, she wasn't getting enough buyers for long-term American debt. And so, as a result of that, she started issuing short-term debt, which is more attractive to investors because, you know, it's always important to keep your eye on inflation. But if let's just say you got a 6-month T-bill or something of that nature, you have an option in 6 months to make a change or to roll over, or, you have a number of options, and it all depends upon what's happening. I'm going to repeat something that I was taught decades ago. When I went to get my real estate license, here in Florida, and, they explained the purpose and scope of Fannie and Freddie Mac in the secondary mortgage market, and how it, and I contend artificially inflated that the housing numbers and starts and all the other things that are associated with it. And so anyway, and again, and I know I repeat myself again here, but the inflation numbers we're being told are phony numbers. They're created by the BLS, which gives us phony job numbers. They get revised. Until Donald Trump took office, they were always being revised downward. And after he took credit, which he should have never done, and his advisors should have warned him against this, because once he took credit for the numbers, he bought the Biden economy, and it's the Biden economy that's going into this depression. And I don't think that there's anything Trump is going to be able to do to stop that, because it's a worldwide phenomenon. All the countries in the Western world have been borrowing like drunk sailors. They're all heavily in debt. And you have to ask yourself, with all these countries borrowing all of these vast sums of money, who exactly is lending it to them? If we confiscated all the money that millionaires and billionaires have in this country, it's only going to feed our government for a few short days, perhaps a week or two, but not too much more than that. And I suggest that one of the problems with inflation is, and if you look at, if you go to the Fed and look at the numbers there, you're going to see that there are a number of alarming things. And of course, you don't hear about none of this stuff in the mainstream press because I'm reluctant to say they're ignorant, but rather I just don't think that they can be honest. They don't think that being honest is a good path forward for their careers. And so we have all of these problems that we're facing. And I just think so many of them are insurmountable. Now, trust me when I say I hope that I'm proven wrong. I hope that at some time I can come on here and say, you know what? I was really fooled. I didn't pay attention to whatever it is that I might then see in the future that changes my opinion as to where we are and where we're going. But right now, all I see is headwinds coming at us everywhere. And there is one lesson that politicians are being taught very clearly by the Trump administration, and that is if you are a politician, you basically are granted carte blanche. You can go out there and commit whatever crime you want to commit, and we're not going to pursue you. Because there's no other way to read this. We know that when Biden was in office, we still know that the Republicans in Congress made referrals to the DOJ. Now, I don't think that they actually expected the Biden DOJ to do anything, but I think they thought that once the Trump DOJ took over, we would start to see results, and we really haven't. There are so many things, so many issues, so many things that even the president has commented on and said, yeah, they need to investigate this. And that's what this administration is good at. They investigate. You watch the news, all we hear about is investigating this fraud, investigating that fraud. And then, today I see where, it took an amateur, Nick Shirley, who I have great respect for. All Americans should commend him for doing such a tremendous job that he did. But the one question that I keep asking, that very few others, in fact, I don't know that I hear anyone asking this question, is where are our elected officials? Where are the Republicans in these areas that have at least limited oversight over these departments that are so foolishly wasting our money that we don't have? So we're giving away in fraud money we don't have that we're then going to pay interest on for next to forever, or until the total collapse comes. And that's what's going to happen. And it's going to create such a problem worldwide. There'll be anarchy, a lot of starvation, millions of people are going to die. And sometimes I think, you know what, that's their intention. I mean, let's be realistic. What was the whole purpose of the pandemic? It was to thin out the population. And in my personal experience, I hate to admit I was gung-ho to get those vid shots early on. I got 2 of them. And I'll never take another vaccine in my life. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, it's not going to happen, let me tell you. But the whole purpose of that pandemic was to thin out the population. And apparently, the people are A-okay with this. I would have thought that you would have had a lot of the victims, unnecessary victims, people who were virtually, for all practical purposes, murdered. And who's being held to account for that? Nobody. So let me ask you this question. If nobody's held to account for it, isn't that another reason to move forward with another such? Because keep in mind, they still haven't got the goal that they want, which is to annihilate about 6 or 7 billion people from the planet. And I can only assume that here in America, most Americans are okay with this. I saw a headline yesterday, and it was somewhat bothersome. I don't remember it now or whatever, but what it talked about an ex-leader of the Tea Party movement. And I said, well, see, there's the problem. The Tea Party was a great grassroots movement, and the minute they started having leaders and the such, everyone left it, because these people thought that they were going to use a real grassroots movement for their own personal political future. And it destroyed the Tea Party. But I would have thought, when I look at the increase in spending that has occurred since the Tea Party, I would have thought people would have been out in the streets in huge numbers protesting, because these people are going to be the ones who are going to suffer the consequences. And most of them don't realize that yet. And it's a shame that they don't. Now, I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I know when you start hearing about companies that have lost billions of dollars of investor money, and you have others saying that this is going to be in the trillions of dollars, at some point in time, I believe the whole system is going to collapse from the weight of itself. And even with Trump doing a lot of things to help support American business, the problem is this is a worldwide phenomenon, and we're not going to be able to fix the problems around the world. Heck, we can't even fix the one problem that Donald Trump started, and that's this war in Iran. He's now thinking that, well, maybe we need to go back to square one and finish this. Yes, Mr. President, it should have been finished a long time ago and would have been finished a long time ago if you didn't have in the back of your mind this thing that you want to be known as the peace president. And let me be clear, you are never going to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Never. It's controlled by leftists, and no leftist is ever going to vote, no matter what you do, to give you that Peace Prize. So give up the thought and go back to being the Donald Trump you were in your first term. You started this war, and you must end the war, and the sooner it ends, the better, because the Strait of Hormuz must be opened up. You know, the whole world is going to be livid at the United States because we started this, and the whole world right now is running out of oil. I don't care what they tell you. The amount of oil reserves around the world is at all-time record lows. And there's nothing that's going to push it up any higher. In fact, what we're finding out is there are these continued attacks by Iran, which kind of negates all the stories the president keeps telling us about how everything's destroyed. Well, obviously, not enough has been destroyed because they're still able to hit their neighbors. And you know what? They're doing it with relative accuracy. They fired those rockets in Jordan at an American base, hoping to do harm to Americans, and they accomplished it. And this is with this allegedly decimated military. See, the problem is, and the president knows this because I've heard him recently say it, and he should have known it right from the beginning. You just can't trust these people. They may sign agreements and they may make all kind of agreements, but they don't never follow through on them. They're just a means of going to the next step. And already this thing has been delayed so much. And I know at one point, I think now it was a month ago when the president came out and he said, in Iran, and I'm sorry, but here again is my short-term memory problem making me forget where I'm at. And again, why do I have this problem? I have this problem because I took two of them things in my arm, okay? And I read a peer-reviewed doctor's written study that talked about how when the recipients of those pandemic injections have an effect on people as they age. And as people are aging who've had the shots, what they're finding is they're having numerous neurological problems, brain problems. And that's what I have, a short-term memory problem. No, I don't have dementia. No, I don't have Alzheimer's. And I know this because I have no amyloids, which amyloids is the culprit in both those conditions. And of course, I've had all the tests. I've seen the top neurologists in the department at the main VA hospital where I get my care. And do I have a diagnosis? No. Have they given me medication? Yeah, they've given me the same medication that they would give a person with Alzheimer's. But, like I said, I don't have it, but I do have this short-term memory problem where my mind will just go completely blank. And it's not like I forgot this stuff or anything, because I remember everything. I just may not be remembering right at that time, but it still is in my mind, and it's still going to come forward. I don't forget people. I don't forget who I am. I don't forget where I am. I know how to get from point A to point B. I travel all over the place. So, they give me a test, and I call it, I'm going to be a little politically correct here and not say what I call it, but I'll call it, to give you an idea, a TARD test, and they ask me all these silly questions in it. And, of course, I can answer all the questions because my mind is not going. My mind is fine. Yeah, I do have a little problem sometimes with names and stuff like that, but you know, I am getting old, and as you get older, this is as something that happens with age. You know, I accept that, but it's hard accepting the fact that you were scammed when they put that nonsense, when they put that poison in our bodies. Now, I've been fortunate enough, and the way it has affected me is nowhere's near as severe as other people have had to suffer. And it's all needless. And what has happened since? And who's been charged or anything? Nobody. Fauci got a pardon. That pardon should be easily overturned because we have the president at the time, Joe Biden, testifying that he was unaware of that pardon. His aides did it at the last minute because, of course, they knew that what was going on. And it's a shame that these things happen, but it is what it is. Anyway, I've probably ranted enough for today, and I don't have too many raves out there, but I think that's just going to be how this channel progresses. Anyway, if anyone has any questions or any comments on what we've talked about here, I would be more than happy to read them and respond where applicable. I wish you all to have a safe day. It is a crazy world out there. It gets crazier by the day, but we have to deal with it. Bye-bye. Stay safe.